Welcome to the first of three S3 BGE literacy lessons. And in these lessons, we're going to focus on grammar, RUI skills, and developing our annotation skills as well. Each lesson will have a worksheet that will accompany it, and you will find that worksheet in a Teams assignment. Let's start then with our grammar starter. And in this lesson, we're going to look at affect versus effect. Before we do that though, we need a quick refresher about verbs and nouns. Okay, so just as a reminder, a verb is an action or a state. In other words, it's a doing word. A noun is the name of a thing, so it's a naming word. With that in mind then, affect would be the verb, you affect something else, and effect would be the noun, you can create or cause an effect. A simple way to remember it is from a book called My Grammar and I, or Should That Be Me? And I love that book. It's really, really helpful. And they use the word raven. Remember, affect, verb, effect, noun. You can affect something to cause an effect. What I want you to do now is look at that worksheet and you'll see that there is a starter activity all about affect and effect. So I want you to pause the video and complete that activity. We're going to move on then to look at our reading for understanding, analysis and evaluation skills. We're going to start with an imagery refresher. Now hopefully remember that imagery, not exclusively, but tends to focus on similes, metaphors and personification. We will look at more techniques, and we have looked at more techniques when we've looked at poetry in the past, but we'll focus on these three today. So just as a refresher then, a simile is when you compare one thing to something else, making the comparison clear by using like or as. Personification is when you give an inanimate object human qualities. And metaphor is when you compare one thing to something else by saying it is the other thing. So just as a reminder, a simile could be he ran as fast as a cheetah. Personification could be the wind wailed in my ear, and a metaphor could be he has a heart of gold. So let's look at analysing imagery then. Now we are going to use a method called just as so it is. Now this is quite often used in National 5 RUI, and when we do National 5 this is how we're going to do it. But basically, no matter what method you use, you simply have to always show the literal root of an image and then what the writer actually means. And the way you would write it would be just as, and then explain the literal root, so it is, and then explain what the writer means. So for example, I have a mountain of homework. Just as a mountain is something huge and challenging and difficult to overcome, and equally you can't really move it, so it is that you have so much homework that it looks like you're never going to finish it, and it could even be physically so much homework that you feel like you couldn't even move it. So just as is when you explain what the metaphor or the simile or personification would literally mean, and the so it is bit is when you go on to explain what the writer actually meant. And if you always use this method, then you've covered literal root and writer's meaning every single time. Let's look at a past paper passage. I'll read this out to you just now. Fame, as she implied, freezes you in one frame. Prince William will be lucky ever to take refuge in a proper job. David Beckham will always mean football, and Rowling, who disclosed that she has tried her hand at a novel for adults, will have to write very brilliantly to discard the label of a children's writer. Beckham exploits to his advantage the way in which the famous are transformed into products, often with scant relation to their actual lives or personalities. He treats himself as a logo. In the week that his transfer was announced, he was touring Japan with his wife, endorsing products. William at least has the consolation that his fame derives from his parentage, not from himself. Unless Britain turns republic, he will always be royal. But for those whose fame is built on personality, one crack brings the edifice crashing down. Now, there are a few images in there, but we're only going to focus on one. And the past paper question says, consider one of the above images explain what your chosen image means, and analyse its effect. So, folks, when you do National 5, you'll get passages like this. They'll be much bigger, obviously. This is just focused on one paragraph. And then it's your job to actually find the image. So, what you're looking for are things that are literally untrue. And we're actually going to focus on the very first one. Fame, as she implied, freezes you in one frame. We're going to look at this, and then you're going to go back to your worksheet and have a go at some of the activities to do with imagery. Okay, what I'm going to do is show you what not to write and then show you what to write. And hopefully you can work out why one's better than the other. So the image was, fame, as she implied, freezes you in one frame. Answer A. This is a really effective image as it gives you a fantastic picture in your head of what fame is really like. What I want you to ask yourself is, have they explained the literal root? Have they explained what the writer actually means? Answer B, using just as, so it is. Just as a photograph is something which captures what is happening the instant the photo is taken, so it is that it would be difficult for J.K. Rowling to ever change her career path as she is stuck in people's minds as a children's author. I would actually develop that a bit further. But it says, just as a photograph is something which captures what is happening at the instant the photo is taken and stays that way forever, so it is that it would be difficult for J.K. Rowling to ever change her career path as she is stuck in people's minds as a children's author. Here's just some more examples to go through, and then I want you to have a go yourself on the worksheet. The tidal wave swallowed everything in its path. Just as to swallow something is to consume it and make it disappear, so it is that the wave covered everything, leaving nothing behind. Things were difficult to start with, but it's all plain sailing from here. Just as plain sailing would mean to sail on a calm sea where nothing is going wrong, so it is that the writer felt that things became very straightforward. This coffee tastes like mud. Just as mud is very unpleasant and you wouldn't want to drink it, so it is that the coffee was horrible. So by using just as, so it is, you're doing literal root, writer's meaning. So what I want you to do now is pause the video and complete all the activities relating to imagery. Moving on then to annotating a text. And the text this time is not a poem or a short story, it's actually a song, and it's the song Burn from Hamilton, which is full of beautiful imagery. Annotating is really important. It's an important skill that you will use more and more as you go up throughout the school. In annotation, as well as just reading a text, you're actually engaging with it. So you first of all read the text, make sure you understand it, and remember we've looked at this before with how to read a poem. You then start to zoom in a little bit and start to notice all the different techniques. You zoom in even more and start to think about what the different techniques mean. And then eventually you zoom back out and you look at the text as a whole again and the themes and the big ideas and all those other things, the big bits at the end, okay? Today though, we're purely going to look at annotating this text for the different imagery techniques that we've talked about in this lesson. Now, I do still want you to focus on using this document. Remember though, you could add in text boxes, or if you're able to, you could use the drawing tools to annotate this. Okay, we also have a final task and an extension activity. Final task then that you must do is, once you've annotated the text, I then want you to pick out 3 examples of imagery and analyse them using just as, so it is. Remember that your teacher will either be on the live call, or if you still want to speak to your class teacher but they're not hosting the call, they're happy to talk to you over Teams just by tagging them, okay? So if you go on with that just now. For the extension task, if you do want to find your own article, and remember there are good places out there that still let you have free access to some articles. Some of them are limited to maybe 3 to 6 a month and things like that. If you add it to OneNote, can you please tag your teacher to let them know that this is what you're doing, so they can have a wee look to see what you're up to. Right then, so just to recap what we've done in this lesson today, we've looked at some grammar and affect versus effect. We've covered imagery, and not just that, we've looked at how to analyse an image using just as, so it is, and we've practiced annotating a text. Next lesson, we are going to focus on sound effects, but we're still going to keep going back to imagery, and please keep thinking about just as so it is, because the more you practice, the easier it will become. Bye for now.